The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Get up to a $1,000 deposit match. We sign up Nordic Fantasy with the promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Sunday evening, or night, June 29th, around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the second outright episode for Wimbledon. Going to do the women's tournament, so we're going to break down the quarters and the outrights for Wimbledon on the women's side in a second. For that, though, no recap for the lock and dog. We do have a couple of pending plays from the men's Wimbledon episode from yesterday, but the point is, do want to briefly remind everyone once again, before we get started, that you can leave a like and subscribe to the actual channel on YouTube. I believe we're at 1050 for subscribers, trying to get to 1100 by the next few weeks or so. And a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch with sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable. Recommend getting yourself something there. Plus, a reminder, we also have a great contest going on right now for NASCAR, because the NASCAR in-season tournament is happening right now, and we are running a free contest. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NASCAR contest for a chance to win a $200 gift card, and make sure to subscribe to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Anyway, starting off with the brief dive back into what happened over the last couple of days for the two events leading up to Wimbledon. I know I talked about it in the last episode, but to go a bit more in depth here, Pegula ended up beating Swiatek in the final in Bad Homburg, and ended up seeing Joint beat Ila in an absolute and just an insane tiebreak in the third set, as she ended up winning in Eastbourne. But you saw Joint, who ended up fighting off 4 match points in that breaker, came back and won. Had a crazy match point save midway through the breaker. So either way, nice job by Joint, who had a pretty tough path, if you want to actually deep dive into it, as she ended up beating a couple of the favorites in the event early on. Ended up beating Jabeur in the first match in straight sets. Actually just trying to find the order here. She actually did not beat, Jabeur. She ended up beating, I thought she beat Jabeur. Sorry, I'm just trying to quickly pull up the numbers. Okay, so she did. The problem is she also played doubles, so I had to actually go back to her path. She beat Jabeur in straight sets, then beat Raducanu, then beat Blinkova, then ended up winning in the semis as well, and ended up beating Ila. So she made a great run, ended up losing in the final. So she could have actually had a chance to win both the singles and doubles at Eastbourne, but either way, nice win for the singles title, as she dealt with a ton of adversity, came back, and did eventually win in a final set tiebreak, 12-10. As for Pegula, nice win for her. Swiatek has still never won a grass title in her career, and Pegula has been successful against Swiatek in the past, as she has won 2 straight meetings, beat her in the U.S. Open last year, and beat her in Bad Homburg in the final. Nice job by her. Saw that Swiatek was emotional, and she was kind of crying on the chair after the loss. But nice win for Pegula, entering Wimbledon on a high note, and we'll see if we can keep rolling here after having a very difficult loss in Berlin. An insane match against Samsonova, where she ended up losing a 3.5-hour marathon, basically, with a final set breaker. Point is, though, she responded, came back, and ended up winning the event. Good for her. Nothing else to add. For Swiatek, still trying to find a title, which she has not won in a while, and she's never won one on grass. So, point is, Swiatek played well in the event, not well enough to win, unfortunately for her, but nice job by Pegula, and Joint to win WTA titles. Anyway, time to move on into the actual preview of Wimbledon on the WTA side. Starting off with the recent winners, I mentioned in the men's episode that it has been very chalky on the men's side. The favorites usually win. For the women's side, it has been the polar opposite. It has been complete Armageddon every year. So for the recent winners, you have Krejcikova, who beat Paolini. You had Vondrousova, who ended up beating Jabeur. Rybakina beat Jabeur before she was well known as being an elite player. And you saw Barty as the last favorite to win, as she beat Pliskova a couple years ago. Point is, though, you've had 3 straight Cinderella runs, and we'll see if that happens again for the 4th straight year. Krejcikova was a massive long shot. She ended up going all the way. You saw Vondrousova, massive long shot. She was about 100-1 or more. She won it outright, and Rybakina was around 100-1 at the time. So 3 straight massive long shots have won Wimbledon. We'll see if it turns into a 4th one here in 2025. Anyway, a point is moving on to the actual quarter picks here. For the first quarter, this is the Sabalenka quarter She is at plus 100. You have Keys at 4-1, Vondrousova at 5-1, Svitolina at 9-1. You have Badoza at 14-1, assuming she's actually healthy, which is, I'd say, a question mark. Vekic is at 16-1. Layla is at 18-1. You have Raducanu at 20-1, Mertens at 28-1, Buskova at 50-1, Bolter at 50-1, and you kind of get the point. So Sabalenka has had a pretty weird history in Wimbledon because she's been fine here. She's never actually won a title or made it to the final of Wimbledon, but a reminder that she wasn't exactly allowed to participate in a couple of seasons. So based on that, she ended up making the semis in each of the last two appearances. She's been fine here, but she was not able to participate in 2022 and 2024. So she ended up missing a couple of opportunities to maybe make it to a final or beyond. But either way, 2 straight semifinal appearances. We'll see if she can go further in this one, as she's definitely the worthy favorite in this quarter. Now, her actual path is not bad. Does have Buskova potentially in the second round, which is fine. However, it could be Vondrousova in the third round. And we know Vondrousova did beat her in, I believe it was Berlin about a week or two ago. So it's not really the best draw for Sabalenka with Vondrousova, who, when healthy, can be very, very dangerous on grass. So I do think for the sake of this quarter, you can argue that Sabalenka might get revenge for the straight set loss in Berlin. Either way, though, I do think you could argue Sabalenka was, I don't want to say emotionally spent from the comeback against Rybakina the previous day. But either way, point is you saw Vondrousova beat her comfortably. I think whoever wins that match will win the quarter, personally. I understand the argument is you can go with Keys and people on the other side of the draw and try to find ways to, I'd say, stall facing off against either Sabalenka or Vondrousova. Keys, though, has never made it to a semi in Wimbledon before, so I do think that she might be fool's gold for this one. You're looking at Svitolina, who I think can perform well here. I'll get back to her in a second. Badoza can't stay healthy. Vekic, I don't think, is good enough, in my opinion. I know that she can occasionally make a great run in a Grand Slam. Recent form, not really been that good, so I'll pass on her at 16-1. Layla's been underwhelming. Raducanu is really not that good, and I think that's basically it. So for the outrights, I am going to go with 2 of the expected options, 2 people that play each other in the third round. Give me Sabalenka at plus 115, and I will take Vondrousova at plus 650, shopping around. However, I did also take Svitolina at 12-1. I like the price. She has made the semis here twice, made a quarterfinal last year. So the point is she has been successful in Wimbledon for the last couple of years especially. I think 12-1 for her draw is favorable. Svitolina, just for reference, does have a pretty easy matchup in the first round, as she does have Bonder, then she has either Sasnovich or Gracheva, and she's looking at Mertens as the ranked person in intermediate section. Not too bad. What to face off against either Sabalenka or Vondrousova. But I do think that Svitolina at 12-1 is too good of a player to have that price, when she might not have to face off against Sabalenka if Vondrousova does beat her. So I'll see what happens there, but I do like Svitolina at 12-1 as the long shot, quote-unquote, for the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter, the most open quarter that we have. This is the Paolini quarter, as she's at 350 as the favorite. You have Anisimova at 5-1. You have Zhang at 6-1, who historically speaking is awful at Wimbledon. You have Noskova at 750. You have Osaka at 9-1. Jabor's at 10-1, despite being in really bad form lately. Ostapenko is at 10-1, who retired against Ila with the ankle issue. But you have Wimbledon on deck. She's probably fine, but I wanted to mention that. You have Haddad Maia at 11-1, Schneider at 12-1, Kruger at 22-1. You have Siniakova at 28-1, and you kind of get the point. So for the actual reminder, Paolini made the final last year. However, before making the final, she really never had any grass success at all, and that's what made the final that shocking between her and Krejcikova last year. Having said that, I do think the actual path for Paolini is appealing. She has not been in great form recently, but I do think the path is very nice. She has basically a bye into the third round, then probably Noskova. I mean, Perra could in theory beat her, so we'll see what happens there in that first round matchup. But I think Paolini has a pretty good draw. Anisimova is the potential matchup in the fourth round, which is why it's pretty interesting that they're the 2 favorites in the actual quarter. But you're looking at Anisimova, by comparison, in the intermediate section, does have what could be Haddad Maia in there, who can be tricky. Putintseva can be tricky on grass as well, so that could be an interesting first-round matchup. So I do think that you're looking at the immediate actual sections there. It would not shock me if Paolini made it through her section, and Anisimova maybe lost, and you got Haddad Maia or somebody, for example, instead. But the point is, I like the actual draw for Paolini. Going into the quarter, I actually wanted to fade her. But looking at the draw itself, I think it's pretty favorable. I think that 350 is a good price for a player with what should be a bunch of massive moneyline favorite lines in the first couple rounds. So I'll go with Paolini at 350. Do think it's a good spot for her to potentially make it back into the semis here. But I like the draw. I think the actual quarter's weak. Anisimova has been good lately, but I think her immediate section's not great. Zhang's been terrible in Wimbledon her entire career. Noskova, I think is okay, but I'm not as high on her as other people. Osaka does have a very good draw, I'll admit it. The problem is Osaka has been so bad lately that I can't really trust her. And yes, the argument is she had a competitive match against Navarro, not on the scoreboard, but it was competitive if you watched it. She should do well in the event. I'll admit it. I like her actual path. So I thought about Osaka. In reality, though, I'll believe it when I see it. I feel like she's going to unravel at some point. I think she makes it into the potential fourth round, but I am just not fully interested in Osaka at this point. And I think 9-1 actually sounds right for a price. Normally, they price it too cheaply. I think her quarter's favorable, at least the draw for her. But I'm not going to take Osaka. I just can't really trust her enough to actually go the distance here, so I'll pass. However, I'm not going to go with Paolini by herself. I am going to go with somebody else. I am going to go with Schneider as my second choice here at 12-1. The path's pretty good here. It does a matchup against Uchijima in the first round, then either Para or Martic. So that could be potentially interesting, but that could go either way. Ostapenko has been fine. Would have to face off against Jabeur in the second round, and potentially Schneider can feast on the scraps. But I do think Ostapenko with the ankle, maybe that's bothering her. Jabeur has been quite bad lately. I think Schneider's pretty good on grass. I think that 12-1 is a good price. She does get to avoid Paolini until the potential quarterfinal matchup. But if I am going to mention that it's a decent path for Osaka, I do think you can make an argument the bottom half does have some openings. People will go for Osaka, and we'll go for potentially Ostapenko at 10-1. I'm not sure about the fitness right now for Ostapenko, and she made the quarters last year, so I understand that argument. But I'd rather go for, in my opinion, Schneider, who I think has the better draw. So I'll go with her as the long shot here at 12-1. Unlike the men's episode, which was pretty chalky, I did get a bit liberal when it comes to going for long shots here, because we know Wimbledon has been chaotic as hell for the last couple of years. Give me Schneider at 12-1 as my long shot for the second quarter. Anyway, before we get into the other quarters, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookie, because they're available in a ton of locations. Use them for any sport, mostly baseball, for WNBA, for golf, for UFC, for tennis, of course. You could also use it in different formats in terms of deposits and withdrawals. You could use deposits with crypto for Lightning Fast payouts. And a reminder, you could also use the promo code SGPN when you sign up for your new account to get a 100% match up to 1K. Terms and conditions with MyBookie promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa, because they are still hosting their Ultimate Fantasy Bowl contest for a chance for a 12-person league to draft Vegas Patriotic VIPs for the stay. Go to right from the airport, a 5K tag from stadium, swim, and hotel stay for you and your 11 league mates. We also have a great discount code if you're not entering the contest. Anyway, you can always get 15% off everything Circa properties with the code SGP15. Enter last chance for the contest at sportsgamebox.com Circa to get in on the free contest. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Went through the first two quarters. Time to keep it rolling for the third quarter. This is going to be the Andreeva quarter, which is, in my opinion, very open, because Andreeva is, historically speaking, not very good on grass. Now, she was looking better in the last tune-up event, but I still don't trust her at all, and I do think her grass game is still not fully there. Of course, she's great on clay. She's great on hard court as well. Grass, though, has been her weakness up to this point. So 210 is the current price as the favorite. You have Pegula at 4-1, fresh off the title. You have Alexandrova at 550. You have Navarro at 650. Mukova at 14-1. Krejcikova, defending champion, at 15-1. Bencic at 16-1. Ila, who's off the runner-up finish, is at 18-1 as well. You have Wang at 18-1, Maria at 18-1, who had the crazy Cinderella title run a couple weeks ago on grass, and that's basically it. So the question is, am I going to go with Andreeva because of her overall skill, or am I going to pass on her because I don't think she's good enough on grass? The answer is option B. I'm not taking Andreeva. I think the price is too bad. I think for the actual form right now, and the skill set on grass, I think Pegula should be favored, actually, in this quarter. I think that Andreeva being basically half the price of Pegula is fundamentally wrong. Now, Andreeva's path is not that bad. In fact, it's pretty favorable. She has a Sheriff, and then she ends up having either Bronzetti or Teichmann. She'll beat whoever wins that match. That's probably the worst quality match there in the first round, because Bronzetti and Teichmann are horrible on grass. But either way, Baptiste can maybe make some noise in that section. A Frech maybe could as well. So I understand why the price might look cheap, but I do think you're looking at a spot where I would probably take Navarro over Andreeva anyway in a hypothetical matchup in the fourth round. And with that being the case, I just don't trust Andreeva to get there at the end because I don't think that her game on grass is that good. So I'm going to pass on Andreeva. The question is why back Pegula, who is potentially tired after having the very solid title run that we just saw. The answer is I'm going to take her anyway. I'm going to go at 4-1. I think 4-1 is a good price. I think Pegula is a very solid grass player. We saw it. She beats Swiatek. She was able to get the job done and win a title, and she's in good form. I do think it's interesting, though, that Pegula has a price that's basically 2 times the odds on, once again, Andreeva, despite being the better grass player. But she won in Bad Homburg, beat Swiatek, beat Noskova, beat Navarro, and beat Siniakova. I do like the fact that she's in the same quarter as Navarro, and she just beat her. So I do like that little piece of insurance, or at least reassurance, that she can get the job done again. I do think it's interesting, though, that she did lose Alexandrova in an absolute she lost to Samsonova. I take it back. In a 3-set marathon. Point is, though, I do think she should be favored in this actual quarter based on form, based on her winning Homburg, and based on the fact that we know she can make deep runs in Grand Slams. Give me Pegula at 4-1. I think the price is pretty solid there, and I'll go once again with her as my choice for the favorite to win the actual quarter. However, I will take somebody else. I am going to go with Alexandrova at 8-1. I think the price is pretty good. I do think that she's a pretty underrated grass player, in my opinion, and I do think you're looking at her actual path. It's not that bad. Looking at it, she has Han, a qualifier in the first round, either Jovic or Lemons, in the second round. You're looking at her immediate section being Mukova, who's ranked, who's been injured, and has not really been in good form this season. So you're looking at Alexandrova, who might have a decent path into the potential third round. And beyond that, she would have to face off against Pegula in the fourth round, but I do think you might end up getting good opportunity for Alexandrova and Pegula to face off against each other in the fourth round, and that way you end up getting somebody who's in the quarterfinals. So I'll go with her. I like her immediate section. I think 8-1 is a good price. I'll take her as my long shot for the third quarter. Moving on to the fourth quarter, this is the Rybakina quarter. Now, she's at plus 200. You have Goff at plus 210. That's kind of what I was referring to, though, when it comes back to the Pegula quarter. We know Goff is more highly ranked than Rybakina. She won the French Open. And at the same point, Rybakina is favored because they know that she's better on grass than Goff. The same thing should be said about Pegula compared to Andreeva. So that's kind of why I thought the odds were not exactly consistent with the third quarter logic and the fourth quarter logic. But either way, Rybakina is favored. Goff right behind her. You have Swiatek at 225. Crazy quarter. Rybakina, Goff, and Swiatek together. You have Samsonova at 12-1. Joint off the title at 20-1. Kasatkina at 20-1 as well. Towson 22-1. Collins 28-1. You get the point. So for the actual quarter itself, am I going to go with any other long shots in the immediate quarter? No. I think one of the 3 favorites will win the quarter. The question is which, and I will pick the one that is by far the best on grass, the one that actually won a title here a couple years ago. Give me Rybakina at plus 225. I understand mentally she can have some moments. We saw that last year where she had a golden opportunity and draw to win a title again, and she fell apart. But I like the draw. I think that the overall quarter is actually weaker than you think. Yes, Samsonova and Joint can be potentially frustrating to deal with. Joint has a tough matchup, though, in the first round, which I think can cause an early elimination for her. And you're looking at Joint, for example, playing against Samsonova. So you're looking at the people that are not in the main 3 for the odds here. You have 4 and 5 against each other in the first round. So I can't take either of them. Kasatkina's been really bad lately. I don't think her game translates well to grass at all. So I'm not really sold on her either. Towson's a bit too streaky. The point is, we know that Swiatek, I said before, has never won a grass title in her career. She has not won a title in a while. I do think that there's no value on her worst surface in okay form at 225. Goff's also not very good on grass. She won the French Open, played against a qualifier in her only grass match, lost in straight sets, got out of there. I don't think she's good enough to beat Rybakina on grass, in my opinion. So for me, I'm going to go with Rybakina at 225 by herself. I will not take anybody else. I think that is the approach for me. I think Swiatek has no value because of her lack of grass, I'd say, history and resume, and Goff has not been in good form on grass recently, and I don't trust her on grass. So give me Rybakina at 225. I think that she's a very good price to get the job done here in the fourth quarter. Moving on to the outright picks for the event. So for the odds for the outright, starting off with the favorite, you have Sabalenka at about 260, Rybakina at 6-1, Goff at 8-1, Swiatek 9-1, Keys 15-1, Andreeva 16-1, Vondrousova is at 18-1, Pegula 22-1, Zhang at 30-1, which is an absolute donation, by the way, because she's that bad on grass. Paolini at 30-1. You have Anisimova at 30-1 as well. Svitolina 50-1, Navarro 50-1, Jabeur 60-1. Also been in bad form lately. Osaka 65-1, Alexandrova 65-1. You kind of get the point. If you want to go for some long shots, Ostapenko's at 80-1. I mean, Raducanu's got no chance, but she's 100-1. You want the back-to-back titles for Krejcikova? You can get that at 80-1 as well. Schneider is at 100-1. And yeah, you got Bencic at 100-1, etc. So the point is for the actual outrights, of course, we're going to overlap with the quarter picks. Am I going Sabalenka? I am not. I am not going to. We did not take her in the French Open. We thought that Sabalenka was going to potentially choke again. We've seen it in the Grand Slam so far this year. Lost to Keys in the Australian Open final. Lost to Goff in the French Open final. I do think that Sabalenka should make a deep run here, but Vondrousova in the third round, then potentially Svitolina, really not the best quarter for her. And I do think that with her history of choking in big matches, I do think there's no value at 260 for basically a first-time winner to win at 260. I can't take that for the price. Now, I am going to go with Rybakina at 600. I think that she's been in fine form lately. I do think that her game is at her best on grass, in my opinion. And I do think that assuming she doesn't mentally implode, which is a big if, I'm aware of it, but I do think her actual quarter is not as tough as people think. The fact is, you're looking at Samsonova and Joint, the two interesting dark horse candidates, against each other in the first round. Rybakina is minus 2,000 in the first match of the tournament, but you're looking at Goff, who's not good on grass at this point. Swiatek is not great on grass either. I like the path, I like the draw, and I do think that Rybakina being able to avoid Sabalenka and with her being able to avoid a couple of other really good players until the potential final, I think is appealing. But you're looking at the actual quarters once again for the section, or for the actual draw, and she gets to avoid Paolini in theory, Schneider, Svitolina, Vondrousova, Sabalenka until the final. I think she can beat Pegula, but there's really not much depth, in my opinion, in the bottom half of the draw. So I'll go for that area. I'll attack that area. Give me Rybakina at 6-1 as my first choice. Sticking with the theme of going with the bottom half of the draw, I am going to go with Pegula at 22-1. Yes, I know she has never won a Grand Slam before. I get it. Having said that, we have seen Americans do well in the Grand Slam so far. We saw Keys win her first ever Grand Slam in the Aussie Open. We saw Goff win the French Open. And I do think maybe that trend continues of Americans making deep runs. Pegula, though, looked very good over the past week, won a title. And even the match she lost to Samsonova was an absolute war that she could have won that took about 3.5 hours. So I think she's in good form. I think 22-1's a good price. I think the draw is pretty good as well. Her quarter is relatively weak because I don't really take Andreeva that seriously on grass. Give me Pegula at 22-1 as my second choice. For the last choice, I had to go bold because we have seen 3 serious long shots win the event back to back to back. I'm not going to go 100-1, but I did go for a person who's never won a Grand Slam before, who I think can actually make a pretty good showing here. Give me Svitolina at 55-1. I think that the draw is not terrible. Yes, she's in the same quarter as Sabalenka and Vondrousova, but they would play each other first. So I do think that, once again, if in theory Sabalenka loses early, Svitolina maybe can beat Vondrousova. She might be able to surprise Sabalenka in maybe a Wimbledon match where she ends up winning a marathon. But I think that 55-1 for a player that's made the semis twice, made the quarterfinals last year, she's an objectively speaking solid grass player. And I do think at 55-1 for a player who's had success in Grand Slams recently, I do think it's a pretty good draw And I think it's a pretty good overall price for her. Yes, I understand it might be intimidating to back somebody who's never actually won a Grand Slam before. But a reminder, we have seen 3 long shot winners in Wimbledon back to back to back. So I'll make the argument for it. We saw her make the quarters in both the Australian Open and the French Open this year. She's in good form. She's made the quarters in 3 of the last 4 Grand Slams. Made the quarters last year, the semis 2 years ago, made the semis in 2019. I think that she is a solid grass player. I like the price. I'll take her at 55-1 for the upside, hoping that she can end up getting out of her quarter. And at that point, I think whoever wins the first quarter will win the actual matchup against the winner of the second quarter. So in other words, I think whether it is Sabalenka, Vondrousova, or Svitolina to win the first quarter, I think they will beat Paolini, etc., in the actual semifinal matchup. So I'll go with that approach. Give me Svitolina at 55-1 as my long shot for the event. Anyway, before we get into the lock and dog, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy, because they're still doing Best Ball Mania happening now all summer long, giving away $15 million in prizes, including $2 million for first place, no waiver wire, no arguments about trades. Best Ball is the best way to play fantasy football. And a reminder, you can also use Underdog for Pick'em. Also, use the promo code SGPN when you sign up for a new account. The code SGPN, you can get a first time deposit up to $1K and a special pick. A reminder, go to underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm, because they just dropped the game-changing feature called Power Trends. They are edited patterns. Rhythm's models have consistently one of a high ROI. I've been using them constantly for the past week, been making some money, so I recommend it. Power Trends are updated daily, so it's to Rhythm, no touts, no noise, just cleaned up picks. Download the Rhythm app, check out Power Trends, start betting smarter. And a reminder, you get a free trial for a week using the link. Go to sportsgamepodcast.com/Rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Cam Podcast. Finished going through the quarters and the outrights for Wimbledon. Time to move on into the actual lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go to a random matchup between Golubic and Lee, and I'll go with Golubic moneyline at -137. I think she's a better grass player, simply put. She's won 4 of her last 6 grass matches. Lee, though, has not been very good on grass, as she is 3-6 straight up in her last 9 matches. Golubic, though, in qualifying and the main draw, is experienced in Wimbledon, and she's been pretty good. She's actually 13-8 straight up in Wimbledon. Lee, not so much. She's 2-5 in Wimbledon, so I do like the fact that Golubic is the better grass player, and she has been better on these particular courts over the years. Plus, Golubic did beat her in the only head-to-head meeting in straight sets. But simply put, the price, I think, might be a bit short. Lee is not a great grass player. Golubic is fine. It's not a matchup between 2 powerhouses. I think it might be a pretty back-and-forth matchup. But I do think Golubic is better. I think the price does feel pretty cheap. I saw it at 150 on, I believe it was Bet365. So I think it's a good price at 137. Give me Golubic moneyline at -137 as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go to the matchup between Zhang and Siniakova. Said before, Zhang, despite being a top 5, top 10 player in the world, is historically awful at Wimbledon. I'm going to fade her. Give me Siniakova plus 2.5 games at +100. Siniakova's been good lately. She has won 6 of her last 9 grass matches. Zhang, though, has been really bad at Wimbledon. She's lost 3 straight Wimbledon matches. She's lost in the first round as a massive favorite in back-to-back years. So I think that there is a potential upset brewing here. Siniakova has seen her on grass before, and she's owned Zhang on grass before. Siniakova has won both grass meetings in straight sets, including Wimbledon in 2023. So Siniakova has beaten her on these courts before. She's solid on grass. Zhang, not so much. 2.5, though, I think is a very good number for even money. Fading Zhang, who is really bad on grass, historically speaking. She had a decent showing in her last event, but in Wimbledon, she's constantly laid an egg. Think it might happen again. Give me Siniakova plus the 2.5 games here at +100 as my dog. So once again, the plays here for the show. The lock's going to be on Golubic moneyline at -137 against Lee. For the dog, give me Siniakova plus 2.5 games at +100 against Zhang. Going to wrap it up for the show. Back once again for the second round of the men's Wimbledon in a couple days. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.